Welcome to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. Dr. Sonny Spira. Our guest today is Dr. Aaron Nicholas, and he's going to talk about his journey in dentistry from a startup to a almost going out of bankrupt after 2 years to recovering to now having all these insurance plans. So starting fee for service, joining all these plans, having all these plans come in, and then getting out of them in a logical and a quicker fashion. And he just has a really nice tone, really easy demeanor, very interesting story. He also has some interesting stuff that he's getting involved with. We're going to have another podcast. We're going to cover some of that. Interesting and neat guy. I think you're all going to like him. As always, Fee for Service Dentist Podcast brought to you by Kettenbach. Kettenbach has a brand new restorative product, Visalis Fill and Flow. It's a light cured nano hybrid composite. It's highly filled, over 80%. High polishability, very desirable in aesthetic restorative material, and it provides high durability and great strength. Check it out, folks. It's a great anterior, great posterior composite. Has good shade system, very easy to select. Remember, your costs are lower at Kettenbach, available direct to your office with no middleman cost. To learn more or to order, call Kettenbach. You have a rep in your area, I guarantee it. 877-532-2123. Reach out, or you can hit them up on the web. If you like the podcast, click share, click like, subscribe. We appreciate it. Video versions are now available. They're all going through the Facebook page, and I'm sure they're available on other sites. I just don't know how to get to them. If you like the podcast, please click and share it. If you don't, please reach out to me. If you want to be a guest, reach out to me. sonnyspira@gmail.com, or you can text me or call me 607-624-2962. Relax. Enjoy the episode, folks. Appreciate you all. Thank you.
My name is Drew Burns, and I'm a part of a small group of dentists who believe something crazy. We believe that the standard of care is just not good enough. We demand the best of ourselves and the best for our patients. We believe that the best way? No, the only way to practice dentistry is on our own terms. If you ask the dental consultants or the corporate CEOs, they tell you that what we're doing isn't smart, that fee-for-service dentistry is dead, and that the golden age of dentistry is over. Yet, while others focus on profits first, we focus on the patient first. And yet our offices are some of the most profitable in the entire country because we invest in ourselves and we are doing things right. It's our name on the door and it's our reputation on the line. My name is Drew Burns and I am a fee-for-service dentist. This is the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast, and these are our stories.
Welcome to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. Dr. Sonny Spira. Today, our guest, Dr. Aaron Nicholas. Let me give you a little background on Dr. Nicholas. Dr. Aaron. He has been a practicing dentist in Burtonsville, Maryland for 36 plus years. My age range. I like it.
There you go.
That means that he has successfully guided his practice through 2 recessions. I know all about those too. He has seen it all, or most of it. He is a serial entrepreneur with a keen interest in teaching, coaching, and mentoring his fellow dentists. He is the founder of Monday Morning Dentistry and the Dental Assistant School of Maryland. In addition, he is one of the black belt coaches with the Dental Success Institute and an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland Dental School. Dr. Nicholas has spoken about dental efficiency and practice management both locally and internationally, and has authored many instructional programs as well as conducted hands-on courses across the U.S. So please welcome Dr. Nicholas. How you doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Doing great. We had folks, we had a little AV issue earlier. We worked through it. Couple of old fogies battling it out, trying to figure out, is it on your end? Is it on my end? Is it audio?
It's your fault.
I have my daughter who's experienced. She's helping me from the back. She's losing her patience, as she just told me. So we got it. So let's chat. So where'd you grow up? Where are you from? Where's home?
I'm from right here. I grew up in Laurel, Maryland, Burtonsville, Maryland, right there, which is halfway between Washington and Baltimore. Most people don't know where Burtonsville is, even people in this area. So it's just basically a crossroads. And It was convenient. The area was growing. And so that's where I ended up practicing.
The future of fee-for-service dentistry is based in membership patients. If you need help starting your membership plan, or if your plan is too big for your team to manage, visit dentalmembershipdirect.com to set up your free membership growth solution demo with our team.
All right. Most of the people from the area don't know where it's going. Okay, well, we'll keep going, and I'm going to pick up the accent. So far, pretty good. That accent's not strong. I'm going to give you some credit for being there your whole life. That's good.
See, I don't even think I have an accent, so I don't know what you're talking about, but that's fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a pass so far. I'm not really picking it up. So I interviewed a good friend of mine, and he's the basketball coach at Binghamton now, and every now and then "thang" came out, like the word "thang." I was like, oh, there it is, there it is. So
Yeah.
so fill me in a little bit. What was it like growing up? What do your folks do? What was your environment like?
So my parents, both parents were teachers in the end, and then guidance counselors. My dad was actually an industrial arts teacher. My mom was from North Carolina. It's funny what you're saying about the accent because she wanted to go into theater. And so she worked really hard to get rid of her accent. But all the aunts and uncles on that side have a very thick North Carolina, like the gentleman's accent kind of thing.
Yep. Yep.
And one of those brothers was a dentist, which is sort of where the interest came from. So yeah, and growing up, just normal stuff. High school, didn't play any sports. Was a pretty decent student without really trying to having to try very hard. And then went locally for college, as did most of the people in my high school class. And it was very affordable back then. And I commuted, so no big deal there. And worked both through college and through dental school. So just kind of what I would consider a normal childhood.
So your uncle was a dentist then, did I understand that right?
Yep, he was a dentist.
Okay. Was he your dentist? Like, was he in your area?
He was in Northern Virginia, and he was about 40 minutes away. So, when it was time for a dental appointment, we drove down there, and he would see us, and then he'd take us out for lunch. And it was really interesting because
that's a little perk.
Yeah, not too bad. It was really interesting because I didn't realize he was a doctor until later on because we just went to see Uncle Roland, and that's how we got our teeth taken care of. So it wasn't until later, almost till I was in dental school, that I realized that dentists were doctors also. So which was a little interesting.
So when did that become like a career path? When did you have the moment that said, "I might be a dentist"? I mean, were your parents?
Sure.
I mean, with teachers, I'm sure education was a valuable asset. Was that something they talked to you about? Where did that come from?
Yeah, they were. The education was a valuable asset. It wasn't a question of, are you going to go to college? It's just which one are you going to go to and what are you going to majoring in is what the deal was. The original career path actually was to go to seminary. And I got into college, and I did a couple of years, and then I went to a young pastors conference in Louisville, Kentucky. I was Baptist at the time, and that's where one of the, I think, Southern Seminaries, the name of it was there. And they had like a young pastors conference, or if you're thinking about going into ministry, and I drove out there, and I spent the weekend. And when I came back, I was really, really sure I should not go into the pastorate. That would just not be a good match for me. So it wasn't.
So you really were like, you really was, going that route, and you investigated it, and good for you. But good for you for spending that extra, energy doing that.
Yeah. Well, so I went out there and I thought that would like solidify it. And when I went out there, it did solidify it, but it solidified that I shouldn't do that. And I just kind of decided, I can serve people in another way. I can serve God in a different way. I don't necessarily need to be in full-time ministry. So I don't think you and I have discussed this or not, but I've actually gone on a mission trip almost every year since I got out of dental school. And that's kind of where I'm fulfilling that want right there. So yeah, I did that, and then I came back, and now it's like, okay, well, we got to pick a different career path. And so I looked at engineering, and I looked at like psychology, and I looked at a couple of other things. And then when I finally kind of landed on dentistry, I actually ended up working for that uncle one summer again to see, well, is this something I'd want to do or not? And I'm like, this is actually fairly interesting. Everybody else in the office, I wouldn't want their jobs, but like what he's doing is kind of interesting. I think I could do that. But the problem was now I've taken no math and no science for 2.5 years. So I ended up, squeezing 4 years of education into 5, and then heading off for dental school without an undergrad degree. So I did not have enough credits in the right spots to have a bachelor's of anything. But dentistry is a clinical degree as opposed to an educational degree. That's not the right word, but anyway, as opposed to an academic degree. And so you can go to dental school without having to have an undergrad degree. And I did.
Our show is sponsored by our good friends at Metadenta. Metadenta has served the dental community since the 1940s with award-winning innovation and a large catalog of dental products in most facets of dentistry. I personally use several of their products and recommend them to anyone I can. They are a sponsor of the program and are offering 30% off. That's right, 30% off anything site-wide at metadenta.com. Simply use the code FFSD30 at checkout and get your 30% instant savings. From CR-rated prophy angles, hygiene, high-speed handpieces, burr, endo, whitening, they more than have you covered. Their customer service is amazing and they are willing to walk you through an order at any time. So if you have any questions, give them a call at 800-221-0750. That number, 800-221-0750. Or send them an email at orders@metadenta.com and mention the Fee-for-Service Dentistry Group and get your discounts. I've had, there's another person I spoke to, they had the same situation without the degree. I mean, the amount of academics that you got to take in dental school, it's like medical school. I was surprised. Now, let me ask you this. Did you get a degree, an undergraduate degree post first year of dental school? Did they finally say, hey, listen, no?
No, nobody really came to me and said, this is a possibility. And I didn't really pursue it because I was always like, I want to come out and be a dentist. I don't want to be a professor. I don't want to be a researcher. I want to treat people. And I didn't need it to do that. And I kind of felt that dentistry was or the dental school was challenging enough as it was. It just didn't seem like a thing to do. Although, once I was through, I learned a number of things I didn't take advantage of, and going out and doing any kind of a post dental school year, anything of that sort. I didn't even know that existed until like the last 6 months. And then I was like, yeah, I know I just want to go out and practice. So I'll just go do that.
All right. Okay. So where did you end up? Did you go to University of Maryland and then University of Maryland Dental School then?
I did. I went to the University of Maryland. I got accepted into Maryland Dental School. And then at the last minute, I had one of those hiccup moments. And I'm like, can I defer my acceptance for a year? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. You can do that. So at the time I was working at a JCPenney selling suits. And I did that for a year. And at the end of the year, I wasn't any more sure that I wanted to be a dentist, but I was really, really sure that I did not want to be selling suits the rest of my life. And I didn't see that I was doing anything more important. So it seemed like going to dental school was a good choice. And my dad said to me, look, I'll pay for the first year of dental school. And if you don't want to go, then drop out, knowing that I've never quit something I started. So once I started, I was kind of in for the long haul, and I think he sort of knew that. And once I got in, it was a little easier to stay in than to stand on the outside and go, do I jump or not?
Did you start dental school a little bit older then? Were you like 23?
I was 28 when I graduated. So that makes me what? Yeah, 23, something like that.
23, 24. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right in there.
Well, one thing's for sure. I mean, you're not afraid to try things. I think we've established that, right?
Well, if you don't try it, you're not gonna get the reward at the other end. So you might as well give it a shot. And the worst thing that happens is you change course. So
yeah. So I mean, you learn how to pivot and do everything. I mean, that to me, that's a life skill that is underappreciated nowadays, right? Like kids are on one path and like, oh no, I hit a roadblock. Can you pivot? Can you how do you cope with that? Like, I love your attitude. So you're in dental school now. And were you planning the military component? I mean, what was your plans while you were in dental school? Were you thinking, oh, I'm going to join my uncle? What were some of your thoughts in dental school?
So I was in dental school, and my uncle was a dentist, and he did a startup in Northern Virginia back before like Dulles Airport was there. And if you know the area, Dulles Airport's a big deal. Back before Tyson's Corner was there, there's now Tyson's 1 and Tyson's 2. Northern Virginia's just overrun with business, but he started when it's basically two crossroads. So I mean, he was solvent month one, and just just never had any problem bringing patients in, that sort of thing. And so that's my experience of what doing a dental startup was like. In the meantime, my parents had gotten divorced. My mom had gotten remarried, and his son was a dentist in Winchester, Virginia, which is a little further to the west. And he had gone and bought a small practice, et cetera, et cetera. And I had gone by and visited him a time or two, and he had said to me, "Hey, if you're interested, give me a call when you're getting ready to get out of dental school, and maybe we'll bring you in over here." So
your cousin?
It's my stepbrother.
Oh, okay.
My mom got remarried. So yeah.
Okay, I thought it was the dentist.
Right. So my uncle was a dentist, and then my mom got remarried, and my stepfather's son was a dentist.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry. I thought the son was your uncle's son. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So okay.
So my stepbrother.
All right. So he's got a successful practice in another place, and so
right.
So, but you got a couple of different thoughts anyway. So what did you do? You graduated, residency? Did you go work? What happened? Talk about
so I graduated. My uncle was old enough that he had since retired years before that. So there was never I'll go work with my uncle. That was just never a plan. Working with him was a matter of solidifying a decision. So then I went to visit my stepbrother, and we talked, and he had an associate come in that then tried to steal half his practice. And he's the kind of guy where burn me once and I am done. And that's where he was. He's like, "I am done. Your family, but I just can't, And I'm like, that's fine. I understand that. And my last year of dental school, I had worked with, I forget which department it was that was supposed to teach us about business of dentistry and that sort of thing. And
there is no department.
Yeah, I found that out. So I'll tell you a little bit of story about that in a sec. So I had basically worked with him. I'd gone to the boards of planning for all the counties around where I was. I had looked around for a practice, didn't see any in a place that I would want to be at. And so I eventually had decided that Burtonsville seemed like it was a pretty good place to open a practice. And then I went ahead and I came out and I got and then in that time, my dad had passed away. He had left me a little bit of money, which then I wrangled with the bank to get a loan. And so I did a startup in Burtonsville in 1988.
Startup in Burtonsville. Okay. Yeah. Well, you have your uncle who did that successfully, and now you have a stepbrother who purchased a practice, right?
Right.
So two different entry styles.
Right.
And do you mind sharing what practice style? Like, I'm assuming your uncle was fee for service, given the nature where he was.
Yeah. My uncle was fee for service, and he had rented this little house and then bought the little house and then subdivided and rented out the upstairs to another practice. And he was fee for service the whole time. My stepbrother. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to ask you. Keep going. You're on it.
So my stepbrother had bought a small practice in a small town, maybe 2 to 3 hours outside of Washington, D.C. And it's really funny because a lot of people that live there think they're in a suburb of Washington because there's not much between them in DC. It's all, it was all very rural. In his town, there were only 2 other dentists. One guy was independently wealthy and liked to play the ponies. And the other guy got his license yanked for abusing nitrous. So he had a pretty tight grasp on the market because he was in there to work and to do the job. So
okay, so if he's in practice and he doesn't have a gambling habit and he's not whacked out on nitrous, he's going to do okay.
Yeah, and he did. He did really well.
That's some interesting parameters.
Yeah, you got to look around for that kind of a situation, to get it just right. But if you can find
more questions to ask on your interview. Hey, is this going on? So that's interesting. So his model was fee for service, I'm assuming, then, right?
Fee for service also. Yeah.
Okay. So did you guys ever talk business? I mean, besides dentistry? I mean, I'm assuming at some point you guys had to, right?
For my uncle, who was he was a dentist, but he was more a businessman than he was a dentist. And he had he was investing in raw land. He invested in the land where Dulles Airport went, where Tyson's went, and did very well with that sort of thing. He early on had started doing rental houses. And as he described to me, they had to evict a tenant one time. And on his way home from the office, the rental house was on fire because the tenant was unhappy. And that was the day he decided he wasn't going to be renting houses anymore. And that's when he started doing raw land. So, he was very much into that. The summer I worked for him, it was funny because I used to drive him around. He had a Cadillac. He's like, "You want to drive?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I do." And so I basically ferried him around, but he would tell me stories, and it was really interesting. And what he told me was, well, amongst the things he told me was that, most young guys, they don't do well because they come out of dental school and they want it all. They want the big house. They want the fancy car. They want. He's like, and they never quite get the ability to become actually wealthy because they keep pissing it away on the conveniences of life, basically.
Oh, hold that thought. What year was that?
So let's see. I went dental school in 80. Maybe 79. So I graduated high school in 77. I sat out a year. That makes it 78. I went into college. That's 79, 80. So probably between 80 and 81, right there.
So that description from your uncle in 1981, right? You can just change the date, scratch it right off. And I think that sentiment still exists in 2023.
Oh, yeah.
With people, let's say of our good-natured age, will have a lot of the same sentiments. So, what's really funny, well, this generation, it's not this generation, it's the other generation. It's really all it is, don't you think?
Yeah. It's always the other guy. The thing that I found really interesting is people complain about like staff and like it's hard to find good staff. It's hard to find good help and stuff. You look at movies from like the 40s, like the rich people talking, and they're like, "It's so good. It's so hard to find good help anymore." It's like, it's just the way it is. Well, right now I think it's a little harder because, unemployment's at record lows, but it's always been hard to find good people to work for you that you're in alignment with, or that you can train up, or, however you want to see that. But I think it's always hard to find that.
It's just fascinating. I knew there was, I wanted to put that in a time frame because I'm sure as you spoke it, as I heard it, I was like, oh, that sounds exactly like today. Yeah. And I know that this was a few years ago. So, yeah. Okay.
Have you ever heard of the book, The Millionaire Next Door?
Oh, yeah. Great book. Yep.
Okay. Same concept. Exact same concept. Yeah.
It's like, don't judge a book by its cover. Talk about that, right? That was the message I took home. But so you do a startup, and do you emulate those two models that you're more familiar with, or what's your model when you're starting up a startup? And what year did you do the startup? What year was it?
88.
88. Okay, I graduated 89 from dental school, so you were just a little bit ahead of me. Yeah, what was your model when you started?
So I opened it up. It was plumb for 4 ops. I put in 2. I opened up there. Remember that there's no internet, there's no podcast, there's no Instagram, there's no Facebook. So I took out an ad in the Yellow Pages, which at the time, our industry even frowned on that a little bit. It's like,
oh yeah, oh no, no question.
Yeah, that's okay. I
started practicing in 89. I remember you're advertising. You're the devil. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you build a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door, which is completely not true. I don't know who said that, but completely not true. So I even did some Valpak things, that sort of thing. So I get in practice in 88, comes around to the beginning of 90, and things are so slow that I've taken a job with a temp agency, either working as a dentist or a hygienist, whichever it took, whichever was available. In the 2 practices where I filled in for the dentist because one guy had a wrist surgery and I forget what the other guy's deal was. Both of them offered to let me buy in, but I have my own practice. And so I'm not really interested in doing that. They were both in a very nice area. They're in Annapolis, Maryland, which is, very nice. And so we're kind of cooking along, and actually before that. Okay, so that was what happened after I realized I was going bankrupt. So what happened was I'm about a year and a half in, and I realized I'm going bankrupt. I can look at my operating capital, which I didn't know that's what it was called at the time. It was just the money I had in the bank that was going away, and there wasn't enough coming in. And I actually sat down with the doc next door to me, who was a periodontist, and we had both opened the same day, just coincidentally. And so we both had a lot of time as we were building the practices. And one day I was talking with her, and I was saying, I'm probably not going to be here in another 6 months because I'm looking at the money I have, and it's just not growing fast enough. For her, she would call the local general dentist, do a lunch and learn with the hygienist, and they would send her patients. So every time she needed patients, she would just do a lunch and learn, and that worked out fine. My model of getting people in the front door wasn't working because we weren't advertising. It just wasn't happening. And at about that time, she said to me, well, a guy on the next town over just hired this consulting company, and maybe you want to talk to them. And I'm like, there are dental consultants? I didn't even know that existed. And back at that time, there were a lot less of them than there are now. I mean, now it's like everybody's a dental consultant. There's one on every corner. So I ended up calling up that company and had the guy come over, and we sat and talked for a while. And they want you to sign, like they'll give you a month for free, and then they want you to sign a year contract. And so I looked at him, I said, so how long before you think you can get me in the black? And he said, I think we can get you in the black in 6 months. I'm like, okay, that works out really well because I'm going to go bankrupt in about that same amount of time. So if indeed this doesn't work, you guys can get in line behind everybody else. And I guarantee the bank's first, And so that's kind of what he said. No problem. I signed the contract. I started working with them. We were in the black in 6 months. So that's the thing that kind of saved my tail. During that time, I also started temping out as a hygienist and a dentist and that sort of thing. And I also had talked to my uncle and explained to him what was going on. And remember, he's a business guy. And he's like, well, what you need to do is you need to go buy the biggest practice you can find. And I'm like, excuse me? I barely have things together with running the small practice. How am I going to do the big practice? It's like, well, you'll either figure it out or you go bankrupt. And if you go bankrupt, it doesn't really matter whether you go bankrupt big or small because you don't have anything right now. So, take the shot, which I never did. I figured I'd run the pony I had, which ended up working out. But it's funny because now, so many years later, I'm like, oh, that was really good advice. Maybe I should have done that. He knew more than I thought he did. So, yeah.
Okay. So do you want to share who you were working with or just leave it as a consultant?
I'd leave it as a consultant. I think they were really good at the time, but these days I would pick somebody different. So yeah, I'd just rather not say.
So you not only have to be in the black, you got to be in the black plus what you're paying them, right? So that adds to your that's
right. Yeah, that's part of as far as I'm concerned, that was part of being in the black.
Okay. So did you were you a fee for service model? Were you insurance-based model? Did you switch things? What did you do in terms of your business model?
Right. So I started out fee for service. And in that first year and a half, 2 years where things weren't going well, I signed up with a bunch of PPOs, which I don't know what it's like now, but then it would take 6 months to a year before you really saw stuff rolling in from them. So just about the time I got in the black, I started getting a lot of PPO patients, and at the time are there HMOs still? I know there's tons of PPOs. Is the HMO model?
Yeah, I don't hear that as much, but I know what you're talking about because this is right when I was getting into practice. It was HMO, and then capitation plans started rolling in, and
right,
yeah,
right. And so I signed up with both. I signed up HMO. I signed up with whatever I could find. I'm kind of struggling to breathe here, and so I'm doing whatever I can to infuse money and bring patients in the door.
Okay. So now you're in the black, but now you're going to start seeing a lot of patients at a discounted fee.
Yeah. So my experience,
talk about like the next step.
Sure. So my experience with that was I got these HMO patients in, and they would come in and they'd have all these fillings that were like decaying, and yet they'd been seeing their HMO dentist for years. And I'm like, well, and one woman, I remember she had all these buccal composites across the anterior, and I'm like, so what did your previous, when was the last time you went to the dentist? 6 months ago. And what did he say about this area here? Oh, he said he didn't know what it was. And I'm like, okay. And back then the deal was that you did fillings for free because you got your cap fee, and that's what that was supposed to be for. And
Oh, that was capitation plans. Yeah.
yeah. So you got your cap fee.
To treat them. Yeah.
Yeah. And supposedly only like 30% of your patients were going to show up. Well,
Right.
pretty darn close to 100% of mine showed up. So you're getting your cap fee. Now you got to do these fillings for free. And then everybody walking the door had need, most of which could be fulfilled with fillings. And what was happening was these docs were ignoring it because they're going to lose money if they did it. And so I'm like, okay, well, I agreed to do this. I'll do it. And so I was doing a lot of treatment for free. And the thing that broke the camel's back was I had these two patients on this one day. And the first patient came in and they needed a crown. And I quoted them like $365 for this crown. And the patient goes, man, that's expensive. And I'm like, well, you go through your thing. And then I had a patient in the afternoon who wasn't HMO or PPO, and I quoted them like $900 for this crown. And he goes, that's expensive. And I decided right then I could deal with the whistling a lot better at $1,000 than I could at $300. I'm just like, I am done. And then
the only common word in both those sentences is dollars.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then I'm looking at our reimbursements, and then MetLife had decided they were no longer paying for periodic exams. And I'm like, oh no, oh, absolutely not. And that day I pulled out, I didn't care if I went under, I didn't care what happened. I'm like, there is no way I'm working for free. I'm already working for free enough for you guys. And now you're going to tighten this down even more? Forget it. I'd rather go out of business. And I just went ahead and I did, and you can't get off their rolls like in 3 months. It's like they want 90 days or 6 months notice, and you do that. Then they continue to pay you at the reduced fee because, oh, we're so sorry, we didn't know. And so you got to unwind that. And then they don't take your name off their rolls because in order to get businesses to sign up with them, they need to show they have providers in the area. So my name kept being in there, and we'd have patients calling up, we're sorry, we're not taking that anymore. Well, why is your name on the list? I'm like, I can't control that piece. And so we got yelled at for another year, before and 3 or 4 phone calls before our name finally came off the list. And then we kind of started moving forward. And then the thing you find out is that as soon as you start getting reimbursed at some sort of a reasonable rate, you lose a bunch of patients, you work slower, and you make the same money or more. And you're like, oh, well, that wasn't too painful. maybe we need to find the next crappy, HMO or PPO and cut that one too, and you just kind of slowly work your way through. And that's how you kind of, I guess, build up your courage, for lack of a better term.
So your exit strategy really was, part of it was an emotional knee-jerk reaction, right? Because of the lack of paying for periodic exams.
Right.
But you also were recognizing the fact that 308, 900, and you just started to become profitable, and now that's all going to go down the toilet. So did your consultant in that next 6 months, did they step in and say anything, or what was your pathway out? Let me ask you that.
Okay. So you probably remember back when it was like everybody should be a cosmetic dentist. Everybody should be doing cosmetic. You should be doing all veneers and just all that kind of stuff. And so they were kind of pushing in that direction. In those days, also, a lot of the consultants were like, I'm a consultant for you, but you need to do what I did. So if I cut my teeth doing cosmetic dentistry, that's your answer, and you need to come out doing that. And they would push you in that direction. I feel like there's more flexibility now. But that was kind of the path out. And they were seeing that going, okay, well, that worked. And then they were encouraging us to start a referral program. So we got more patients coming in from our patients that were in office already. And they also started encouraging us to have some sort of an in-office plan. So that was sort of the path out. So if you're going to take away this, you need to give back something. So if I'm going to take away us being PPO or HMO in some cases, I need to give you another path to be able to stay in the practice if I want to stay in the practice. So we didn't keep all the patients, but by having those options of having an in-office plan, it allowed people to stay in until their year came up and they could re-choose to have something different. And then they could choose something where they could continue with us. Gotcha. We tended to have a lot of people like leave. Oh, if you're not going to be, no, I'm not going to pay you more. And then they would go around to other PPO practices and they're like, yeah, we didn't like that experience. We're going to come in and pay you a little bit more money because we'd much rather have this experience than that experience.
Okay. So when do you go? When would you say was your all back in full fee for service? What date was that? Was that 2 years after that?
I'd say like 2 years. Yeah, I can't really point to a particular date. We just kept cutting the PPO plans, and then like the last two were like, let's just pull off the Band-Aid. How bad could it be? And that worked out fairly well.
So as you cut them, right? As you cut them, and
Mhm.
you're going in this direction now for these next 2 years, you saw your income increase,
Income went up. Yeah, for sure.
busyness went down slightly.
Busyness was quite a bit actually. Yeah, busyness went down because I don't remember how it happened, but like they had like reviews for the different plans. And on one of the HMO plans, somebody said, "Oh, great guy, tells great stories." And all of a sudden I had all these patients coming in going, "Oh, I hear you're a really good guy. Tell me a good story." I'm just like, okay, just talking.
You became the storyteller.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like, that's great. I don't want more of you people. I want more people who are going to give me money, And
Yeah,
so,
right.
so all of a sudden I had all these HMO patients coming in. So that wasn't so great.
Yeah, it's funny. There was one person that their advice was, let's say they had four plans and they dropped the two worst ones, right? So their plan is to, move. And then he goes, you have to make sure that the other two plans don't fill in the spaces you created by dropping the other two, you know,
Okay.
because you're not really gonna make a big change. But if you leave those other spaces open and you put more regular paying patients in, you can't
Yeah.
help but do better, right?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too is, now I didn't know it then. And the vehicle sport were more constricted back then. But now I'd say if you're going to drop the first two plans, up your marketing. Make sure you're bringing more new patients in the door because the chances are pretty good that every new patient that walks in the door is not going to be a PPO patient. You're going to get some regular fee for service. And I would still hit up the patients in your practice, even if they are PPO, to refer their friends and family because all of their friends don't necessarily have PPO insurance, And then the other thing too is if you have a bunch of patients from a place that you want more patients from, we even did things like run like little healthcare fairs, about dentistry in like the Verizon headquarters down the road from us because we had a bunch of patients from there. The insurance was good. So we went in there with a bunch of, goodie bags and information and food and hung out for a morning and talked to whoever would come by, and that sort of thing. And that also yielded pretty good results.
Okay. So what would your advice be to a younger practitioner? Doesn't have to be a younger person, but a person who's new in their maybe they're just come from different backgrounds, so military or they've had experience in the corporate world, and they're now going to go into private practice. What would be your advice to them?
As far as running a practice?
Well, let's talk either way. So startup or buying. What would your advice be?
Okay, so I find that the military guys, if they've been in for a while, the military is usually pretty good about continuing education and having them getting their confidence up and that sort of thing. I find a lot of young.
Did you say confidence or competence?
Yes, I said confidence, but yes, confidence and confidence, both these things. Both these things.
All right, well, I heard it, and I'm still looking for that accent, by the way. But anyway, no, I just wanted to make sure what I heard. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, both those things because they're usually fairly confident about their abilities and they're fairly competent. So you don't, they know what they're doing. Young docs that come out of dental school and then go directly into corporate. Basically, they've gotten no education, or if they've gotten education, no one's been there to really help them. And if they have been there, they're trying to run them at such a speed that they have a hard time, like really getting their feet underneath them, after coming out of dental school. So depending on the model, if it's fresh out of dental school, I'd look for a really good associateship. And that's, that's fraught with all sorts of issues. And I understand that. But I'd look around and see if I can't find a good doctor to work under for a year or two. I came out, didn't do a residency, did it on my own. And it was probably a good 5 years before I really felt like I could handle what was coming through my chair. I could, but I didn't feel really confident about it. And at times I wasn't quite sure what to do. So anything that we can do to sort of collapse that time period is helpful. And that's that one business that you and I have talked about where I do some online coaching to help get over that hump faster. For the military guys, I'd say, either A, go out and do a de novo startup if you want, or look for a practice that's that you might want to buy, because they've got the clinical skills and they have the space in their head to start concentrating on the business end of things. Now, some guys go in the military because they don't want to deal with the business end of things. If that's you, look for an associateship, a partnership where, maybe that's not the thing that you're going to have to deal with. But coming right out of dental school, especially after coming through COVID, there's just a large gap of an experience that young docs haven't gotten, unfortunately, where I think the military helps to fill that in. They give them plenty of patience, they give them education, and they have older docs around them, and they have the time to kind of get their feet underneath them after getting out of dental school.
I know we're going to have a follow-up podcast, but you touched on it, and
Sure.
some of the educational things that you're now involved with. You saw some need and some demand for certain type of education for that dentist who maybe doesn't have that broader skill set, what have you. Just give us a brief, description of some of those things, and we'll go into it in further detail in the other podcast, but cover some of that now.
Sure. So most of that came out of both what I considered a horrific experience getting my feet underneath myself for those first 5 years.
You pretty much described it. Yeah. It's pretty horrific. Yeah.
So also, I do a lot of coaching for the Dental Success Institute, and what I hear from younger docs and what I hear from owner docs and where those pieces come apart. So the things that I do right now is I have a hands-on 1 hour molar root canal buildup and crowning course. So most guys have not done molars, and if they do molars, it takes them forever, and they just shy away from them. And so even if they are doing marketing, this patient comes in, they need a molar root canal, they can't do it, they send it along. So you're basically a triage service. Okay. Then we have some online courses, one of which is we have that same course online. We also have a surgical extraction course, as well as a assisted hygiene course. But the surgical extraction course is because if you're marketing and you have an emergency come in, which is usually if you're trying to build your practice either within another practice or on your own, emergencies are people that need root canals, usually molars, or people that need extractions, usually surgical, because they waited forever until it's blown up on them and they just got to get this thing out. If you can't do a surgical extraction, guess what? You're sending it down to the oral surgeon. Now you've become a very good triage service for your specialist, but it's not really helping you out a whole lot. So the surgical extraction course we have online, and hopefully we'll have a hands-on by April of next year. So I'm working hard on getting that together. Then the other thing that I've been doing, mostly because of talking to owner docs, is something called the 90-day clinical accelerator. So owner docs, and I did it myself when I was an owner doc and had associates. You hire this associate, you promise these young docs you're going to mentor them. You're going to have a meeting every Thursday or whatever day it is. You're going to talk over cases. You're going to talk about stuff. I'll be in the office when you're in the office. And then all that starts to break down after about the first month. They have a reason they can't come to the meeting. You have a reason you can't come to the meeting. And pretty soon you get a year down the road and the owner doc's frustrated because the associate doc's not producing any more than he was the day he came in the door. And the associate doc's frustrated because he's not producing any more than the day he came in the door. And he doesn't feel like he's gotten that mentorship that he was promised coming in. So you got both those things going on. So the 90-day accelerator is basically, we meet twice a week. There's a concept on the first day. It's like office hours on the second day. I show them the places where they can be more efficient with things. One of the things that always frustrated me about dental school and in some courses is that a doctor will say, well, in my hands, this does this. And I'm like, just teach them the most efficient way to do it. At least then they have one path. And then if they want to swap it out because they like some product better than another product, or they'd rather do it this way than that way, at least they can now measure it and say, this is better than what I was doing, or this is worse than what I was doing. So if it's better, keep it. If it's worse, put it away, but you still have your baseline that you can work from. So the 90-day accelerator is to give them those kinds of skills and a baseline from which they can go ahead and move forward. And then there's just a lot of things that you learn. I mean, you know how it is. That first 5 to 6 years in practice, there's just a lot of things that you learn they can't give it all to you in dental school. In dental school, they got to take you from being a civilian to being not harmful, but that doesn't necessarily make you productive and, particularly skillful. So I'm trying to fold that 5 years into a much smaller period of time. So it's like a 90 days concentrated thing. And then I always tell them, I'm not sending you off in a robot to kind of figure stuff out. Just call me, text me, let's talk if you have something come up. And so that's kind of what the 90-day accelerator is all about.
So the Dental Success Institute is this involved? Are you involved with this via this, or is this your own venture? This course.
So the Dental Success Institute is the company that Mark Costas started. He's the guy that does the Dentalpreneur podcast. But I hired him at first as my coach, and after about a month or two, he looked at me and said, you don't really need me, right? And I was like, yeah, I know. I just need you to make me do what I'm supposed to do. That's your value to me right now. And after a while, he's like, if you wanted to help some younger docs, I think you could. And he invited me to speak at a couple of his things, and eventually invited me to do coaching with him. And so all of that was great. And at some point, he kind of pushed me to start doing something. And that's where the 1 hour molar canal built and crown course came from. And then that all grew out of that conversation with him. So I still do coaching for them. I still do events with them. I spoke at the last summit this past year. And so that's been a very fruitful relationship and one that I value.
Well, fantastic. So we're going to go a little bit further into we're going to dive a little deeper on that, because I think that's a really neat model. And I think that's got a lot to offer a lot of folks, not just new to practice, but people who maybe want to increase their breadth of services or just increase some of their efficiency and deliveries, like you talked about. So any last advice that you would share with some of our brothers and sisters out there?
Yeah, I'd say, it's good to, we have YouTube University now, and we've got all these Facebook pages and that kind of stuff. And I'm fairly active on a few of those. But the thing is, those aren't the same as in-person training. So I get a lot of docs that come through. So the reason that I want the two hands-on is surgical extractions and molar root canals is because those are the two that I just feel like every young doc, if they can get that under their belt, it increases their services exponentially. It's not like you can do a better class 2. Well, you can do a class 2 now, but if it's something you're not doing at all, and if we can add that back for you, and then you go from doing single tooth dentistry to doing quadrant dentistry, it's like, oh, well, I can do that quadrant except for the surgical extraction, except for that molar root canal, except for, et cetera, et cetera. Now I can go, hey, let's take care of those fillings. We're going to take that tooth out at the same time. We'll get that root canal done for you. And so now as a young doc, you can go from doing tooth dentistry to doing quadrant dentistry. And that's obviously the first step on the way to going full mouth dentistry. So, yeah. I forgot the question you asked. I went and ranted.
No, you're on. My question was very simple. What advice would you want to share with any of our brothers and sisters in dentistry? Which is, for you, what to me crystallizes it, which is, hey, there are ways that you can improve your skill set and be maybe a little more efficient in your delivery, and it allows you to maybe look at a bigger scope at the same time.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is, years ago, I heard, and by the way, Howard Fran and I graduated dental school the same year, not the same dental school. He was the first speaker I went to hear because he was on it even back then. And one of the things he said that really stuck with me was, most dentists burn up their competitive drive by chasing a little white ball around and trying to drop it in a hole. How about using that to learn how to do molar canals, surgical extractions, thirds, all that kind of stuff, rather than this thing where you're, outside chasing this ball around. And that just, I don't know, that just always stuck with me. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. And it takes you out of I should be good at everything because I got out of dental school, and puts you more in the camp of, I can continue to hone my skill set and become better and better and better at the things I like to do in dentistry.
He's a colleague and a friend, and a huge, to me, he's a real mentor, because along those same lines, I've learned a ton, and I've learned a bunch of not tos. And I think one of the mistakes that dentists make, especially ones that we'll say are successful, they think they can be successful in anything because they're success here. And
Yeah.
I remember him, and I followed it to the T. Was, focus on your business and your practice. Think of things that you're in the dental world. Like you got a new business, a new venture. It's in the dental world. It's what you know.
Right.
It doesn't mean, okay, because you're good at this, you can go open up a sports bar. I mean,
Yeah.
or the golf analogy, right? I mean, it happens all the time. Well, I'm into this. Well, God bless you. These side hustles. But if it's dentally related, it should be something, what you should be good at. So I fully agree. Last question I want to ask you has nothing to do with dentistry.
Okay.
Personal. If you could go back in time, anywhere, anytime, any place, do anything with anybody, where would you go? When would you go, and why?
Wow. Okay. I took a trip with a bunch of friends to Scotland a number of years ago. We were all like getting into scotch and that sort of thing. And we went for it was like a week or two. And we like traveled around. We went to the Highland Games. We stayed in a couple of castles. I would go back there with friends and do that again, except make it twice as long. I'd go for a month. Because we just had such a great time on that vacation.
But you can go back in time here. That's the key. So you want to go back to early Scottish days and meet some of the original owners of those castles. I mean, you want to do that?
That's interesting. Yeah, that could. So my favorite invention, which no one has invented yet, but I think it would be really good, is a time machine. So that like when you went to some place, you're like, I wonder what this is back in the day. You could like snap to there, see what it was like back in the day, and then come back. So like that would be the ideal invention.
So I'm giving you that opportunity. Do you want to go somewhere with it? You want to take that ride somewhere?
Yeah. I'd probably look at Scotland back in the day. I think that would be a fun exercise. Of course,
I got a chance to visit it.
Yeah, of course, I would be the king that owned the castle. I wouldn't be the peasant that was taking care of the grounds. You've got to make those line those things up.
Yeah, the view, when you're the peasant, the view always looks the same. When you're the king or the lord, the view can change every day. So
yeah,
I don't disagree. Well, hey, Dr. Aaron, I really appreciate your time. Look forward to it. Our next one we'll record in the very near future, and we'll talk more about what you've got going on, because I think it's very exciting and it's a great opportunity for a lot of folks. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on. It's been a great conversation.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast. If you would like to share your fee-for-service story, please fill out our contact form at ffsdentistry.com. Also, be sure to join our Fee-for-Service Dentistry Facebook group. For help starting your dental membership plan, visit dentalmembershipdirect.com and membershipmastercourse.com. Finally, for help with in-house financing, visit dentalfinancingdirect.com. And don't forget, your story is what you make of it. This is your name on the door and your reputation on the line. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.